as promised, Year 11, I am going to read through Macbeth with you and do it this way. And this way then I can also break down and analyse the scenes and the acts as I go through them, and hopefully make some notes in the text that you can then copy down as well. We did suggest that you purchase this copy of the text. Hopefully many of you did take the opportunity to do that. If not, there are copies on Amazon which you can purchase, and you don't necessarily have to buy the brand new ones. You can get the used ones, and if they do have already have some notes in there, then that's actually better. So I'd recommend purchasing probably one that's been used previously. This version though is the one that you want to go for, and that is because it will give you some information right at the start about the text, so you can read through some of the background information about the play. It will give you a little synopsis, so scene by scene what's happened. It will give you the breakdown of the characters there as well. It will also provide you with some analysis as well, some commentary on each of the scenes and the acts as you go through the play. Again, some notes there as well that are useful about the play. Different ideas about the structure as well. You've got information there as well about the sort of source, the text, the date that was all sort of set and produced in. And then we come to the actual play itself. Now this version's good as well because it will provide you with some notes along the side. So if you look, for example, here, number 3, so that's on line 3. So 1, 2, 3, when the hurly-burly's done, it will actually explain to you what some of these phrases mean. So you can use that as part of a way to kind of decode what the what's actually being said in the text. Another thing to remember and keep in mind when you're reading Shakespeare is that Shakespeare used a lot of metaphors with what he was describing, and if you try to picture what he's saying, then it makes it a little bit easier as well to understand. So, as I said, I will read through. I'm not going to mention which character I'm reading. You'll be able to kind of read that and see that as I'm going along. I'm just going to read through the actual speech of the play, and I will make note of the scene directions as well as I go through. And then once I've sort of read it, I will go through and analyse it for meaning, and I'll make some contextual links as well. Alright, so Act 1, Scene 1. The battlefield, thunder and lightning, enter 3 witches. When shall we 3 meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. That will be ere the set of sun, where the place upon the heath, there to meet with Macbeth. I come, grey Malkin, Paddock calls, anon. All, fair is foul, foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. Exeunt. Alright, so starting with the stage directions here, so we're told where this begins, so we're cast straight away into conflict. We have this battlefield situation, and we've got then as well the description of the weather, so thunder and lightning. So already this is creating, and I'm going to make a note here, so quite an ominous atmosphere. So you've got this quite ominous opening, thunder and lightning there creating sort of very dark atmosphere, gloomy, links in as well with the thunder, this idea of the sounds of the battlefield being quite harsh, and then enter 3 witches. And the witches are quite significant because obviously we're talking about Jacobean England here when James was on the throne, and he was highly superstitious. He believed in witches. There were a lot of witch trials that took place in England during this time. So already you've got a contextual factor here with the witches. James himself wrote a text called Demonology, and he wrote about witchcraft in that text. He made it illegal, and if someone was caught practicing witchcraft, they were to be burned. And that happened a lot in England during this time. So there's a very significant link here to what King James would have found quite fearful and would have been quite fearful of. So we then have this conversation between them. So when shall we 3 meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? Now we've got the opening here starts with questions. which terminology for that, interrogatives. So we start with these interrogatives to start. When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? And we can also pick out here that there's a rhyme, and lots of what the witches talk about, there is rhyme, and it almost follows a kind of chant-like, spell-like structure to the way that they speak. Again, reinforcing this idea of them being witches, and linking to the idea that was firmly held in Jacobean England that witches cast spells. Also the fact that in this second question, this second interrogative that we have, in thunder, lightning, or in rain, it sounds like they're making that decision. She's asking when we meet, what shall we how shall we make the weather? How shall we control the weather? Because it was also believed in Jacobean England that witches actually control the weather. So again, we've got this very contextual opening start that the audience at the time would very much understand all of these sort of subtle references there to these beliefs. When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. So we've got this opening here. I mean, the hurly-burly, and as I said to you earlier, you need to make sure that you are looking at the information on the side here. Hurly-burly meaning turmoil or chaos, in other words. When the hurly-burly's done, so assuming once that battle is finished. When the battle's lost and won, which is confirmed in that second line. Now, it's interesting, we've got lost and won here. And we've got these contrasting ideas near each other. Now, you could talk about that as being juxtaposition. So, two ideas that are linked, creating then antithesis, contrast between the two. And that's a key theme throughout the play. We know that there's lots of sort of opposites that are discussed, and we have that later on here, where we have fair is foul and foul is fair, again creating that idea of juxtaposition or antithesis. That will be the set of sun, so we know that at sundown that's going to happen, but actually we could talk about the idea here of the sun setting as being metaphorical in terms of an ending. So significant there as well, and obviously setting of the sun suggesting that that's when the night comes in, and links then to the idea of the supernatural as well, where, you know, supernatural nighttime being when evil things are meant to sort of come out. Where the place upon the heath. Now, again, interesting, because a heath is a sort of very desolate, isolated, bare piece of land where not much grows. So interesting that that's where they're going to meet. There to meet with Macbeth. So there's a hint here, again contextually, that they already have knowledge and they know something that others wouldn't have. So again, it's a contextual link, almost creating this idea of them being all-knowing, that they have knowledge that others don't. I come Grey Malkin, and if you look here, we find out that Grey Malkin is the name of her cat. The witch answers her attendant spirit, a familiar. So Grey Malkin, if you've seen the recent, for example, Sabrina the Teenage Witch series on Netflix, it's that idea of having a familiar, which a familiar would be seen as a spirit or a demon that is attached to a witch that does her bidding, and is sort of linked to the idea of from the devil. And that's again another belief that they would have had in Jacobean England, that witches had familiars. Paddock called, and again Paddock there being toad for the second witch, so again another familiar. And the third witch replying that she's being called as well. So something off stage that we don't hear and we don't know. And then it leaves with them chanting together, again almost like a spell. Fair is foul and foul is fair. So we see here again this idea of juxtaposition or antithesis. We've got the alliteration drawing attention to this line, so emphasizing it. Therefore suggesting it is significant. But it's got this link as well then, saying that something fair is foul and that something foul, something disgusting, is fair, is nice. Sort of links to this idea then of chaos, and maybe suggesting that these witches, maybe even we could say it is foreshadowing the chaos that they are going to be creating. And the chaos they will create in the sort of rest of this story. Hover through the fog and filthy air. So that verb here, hover, again links to that idea that they believed that witches could fly. And again we've got then this negative description of the weather, so through the fog and the filthy air. And again creating that idea of it being quite ominous. So already at the opening of the play we have quite a dark scene to begin with of these witches, and it's already preparing us then for some of the other supernatural elements that come in later on into the play as it develops. And the witches are key figures here, because already we know that they're going to meet with Macbeth. We know that they provide him with information which ultimately leads to his downfall. So the witches are very, very significant characters. They almost drive the story of the play, and the fact that it starts with them again shows and emphasises the importance of the witches. We have these themes of the supernatural coming into it, and we could also talk about the fact that as women, the role of women here as well, that it's interesting that it's the meddling of these women that kind of leads to the downfall of a man who at the beginning is described as being a very good man, a noble man, a gentleman. So we can already start to see some themes emerging even in this opening scene. So I hope that's helped. We'll go on to scene 2 next, but I've kept this one quite brief and just focusing on this first scene to begin with. Any questions or any problems, drop me a little message in our Google Classroom, or don't be afraid to drop me a little email.